Hi everybody, thanks for your patience while we got everything together. I want to welcome everybody here to the first of something that I hope is going to go on for many years to come. This is the inaugural Joe Kubert Distinguished Storyteller Award panel. It's a first at Comic-Con Revolution, first anywhere for that matter. We're here to bestow an award on somebody, but to also honor the legacy of Joe Kubert and all he meant to the comic industry. Comic-Con Revolution is about comic artists, it's about comic creators, and it's about people like Joe and their contributions to this industry. Joe's work on Sergeant Rock and Hawkman is, not to use the phrase loosely, but it's legendary work. You're going to hear from a lot of people today who worked really hard to make this happen. We worked for a long time to make it happen. You're going to maybe hear from Mike Sigliano, who is kind of the heart and soul of this and really wanted this to happen for a long time. You're going to hear from Kristen and David about what Joe's legacy was and about the importance of what the award means and the scholarship fund that we're putting together to help up-and-coming artists who are beginning their careers in this industry. And much like every other industry, you can't just jump in and be great at something. It takes hard work. It takes a support team. It takes people with know-how who are going to mentor and offer their advice. And that's what they're going to talk about. And then you're finally going to hear from Lord Gregory from the Kubert School, and he's going to do the presenting award. Again, this award is about a creator who has a long-lasting legacy. His legacy continues through the Joe Kubert School. His sons, Adam and Andy, who are brothers, really are helping young artists learn how to maneuver, how to draw, how to create, how to storytell. And in the end, that's really what comics are about, telling a great story about great characters. With that, I'd like to kind of turn things over to Mike and just, you got nothing? I don't believe you, Mike. Well, I'm going to speak for Mike then. This is important to Mike because Mike brought me into Comic-Con Revolution as a partner because he loves the industry and he appreciates the amount of energy and effort that goes into the work that everybody does and all the books that you saw on the show floor. And he has been, for as long as I've known him, he's been talking about getting this done. So being a part of it, to honor Joe, but also to work with Mike on it was very special to me. Okay, so if we're not going to do that, I'm going to turn things over to David from Superfan Promotions. And again, he's going to talk a little bit about Joe's legacy now and the scholarship. David?
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to do a little rewind back to when I was 11 years old, and I used to go to small comic conventions like this one, where you could go and, as an 11-year-old who loved comics and loved the process of how they got made, you could stand and talk to comic creators and get sketches and really kind of spend the whole day with them. If you're an inquisitive kid with hopefully good questions, hopefully not too many annoying questions. And when I was 11, I met Joe Kubert, and he did this amazing Hawkman sketch for me, 40 seconds. But he probably talked to me for an hour. And answered I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to be a novelist when I grew up, and he took all this time that he did not have to with me. And that was so impactful, just to have somebody who is that talented at what he did, and is truly a legendary artist. But it was the other things that Joe did. Many years later, I joined DC Comics and ran their PR department. And one of the first projects I got to work on was an original graphic novel of Sergeant Rock, written by the best-selling writer Brian Azzarello and drawn by one of my heroes, Joe Kubert. And so at that time, Joe and I would go and do early morning talk shows, and we'd be sitting in the green room for 45 minutes, and I would just be sitting there peppering him with questions and getting all of the stories about what it was like when he broke into the industry, and the challenges he saw, and what made him excited to do what he did, and the generosity that he took with me and with everybody at DC. When Joe would go to the DC offices, he would stop in, and I'm not exaggerating, he would stop into everyone's office, and he would check in and to see how they were doing, and he would give them pro tips, right? That were very generous, and that he did not have to do that. And his sons, Adam and Andy, did the same thing. And that level of commitment to the comics community, it is a small community, it is an exciting, creative community, and it is full, at its best, of people like Joe Kubert, who dedicated so much of his time not only to making great comics, but to helping to teach his craft and to push the industry to do new things. And that's why I wanted Superfan Promotions to be a part of this, to honor Joe's legacy. Because an interesting thing, I do publicity for comic book creators, and so I was like, okay, I'll go and do a quick search for Joe Kubert. And Joe was a busy guy. He was not going to care about getting a headline. So there wasn't a lot about him. And one of the things I hope that this award does is to remind people of the legacy of Joe, to continue to draw attention to the amazing Joe Kubert School, and to remind people of the value of the comics community, that we are all in it together. And that's why I wanted to be a part of this, and that's why I'm glad to see you out there in the audience today. Thank you for coming. I turn it over to Chris Simon, the Geek Chief.
Thank you, David. My name is Chris Simon. I'm the CEO of Geek Chic Promotions. When I was young, it was my dream to become an artist. I wasn't sure what kind of an artist. I just knew that I loved drawing people in elaborate costumes, making up their background stories, and creating names for them that fit their personality. This most likely stemmed from reading my dad's comic books that he gave me, Archie mostly, with some Lois Lanes thrown in, Betty and Veronica. In high school, I was in the Art Honor Society, and that's when I fell in love with writing. It never once occurred to me that I could get into the professional field of comic books. I decided that I was going to write and draw my own children's books. I had no idea that the Kubert School even existed. And when I went to college, which was an art school, I double majored in illustration and fiction writing. And it was the early 90s, Superman had died, and comics were popular, and there were students in my class who wanted to be pencilers and inkers. It was my junior year that the light bulb went off, and I figured out that comics combined my love of drawing and writing much better than children's books did. And I graduated in the mid-90s and set out creating my own comic book to show to comic book publishers at comic conventions. And back then, the internet was barely a thing, and I was using dot matrix printers, and I considered taking classes to learn how to do the new thing of digitally coloring. My graphic design classes had all been by hand, and needless to say, my first effort at creating a comic book on my own was less than stellar. I used my Comic Sans word balloons to cover up some of my bad spots, and it did not get picked up anywhere. But I tried again and again for years. And over the course of those years, I became immersed in the comic book industry. I decided to start my own publishing company called Starving Artist Studios, and I opened a comic book store called Comics Revolution, weirdly. Comics with an X, because I was super into underground stuff, and the store did not carry much mainstream. And I became very good at project management and networking. And to anyone who knew me, it was no surprise that I wound up editing at Image Comics for close to a decade, starting in the early aughts. And one of the best aspects of that job was saying yes to a creator or a creative team that had never been published before. Working with them, honing their projects to help be the best that they could be. I was I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. When I left Image Comics, I took a job creating science and art programs for Girl Scouts. I reached out to all the professionals that I knew, that I connected with, and I rallied them to teach middle school girls how to create comics from start to finish. I gave them all the tools and knowledge that I acquired through the past decades. I showed them the path that I wish someone had showed me when I was in 6th grade. I brought these workshops to comic conventions and comic book stores and formed enthusiastic partnerships from all aspects of the entertainment industry, some of which are sitting in this very room. So this led me to starting Geek Chic Promotions. Geek Chic Promotions does convention programming, event planning, comic book consultations, branded partnerships. Our clients include Girl Scouts, Comic-Con Revolution, and even Skybound. And as you can see, I am enmeshed in comics world in so many different aspects, and the common thread throughout all of this has been education and helping others. So when I was informed by Atomic Crush Events about the 2 scholarships that they were creating in partnership with the Kubert School, there was no question in my mind that my company needed to support it. Not only has the Kubert School given the industry so much amazing talent, but they provide students with everything they need to become a part of the comics industry. I'm so incredibly honored to be able to contribute to helping a student pay for their education at this school, helping the school to be able to accept talented students who may not otherwise be able to go, and as a result, helping to strengthen the industry with new talent. Education and helping. Everyone who loves this industry should consider investing in its future, and I can't believe that this award wasn't done sooner, and I'm extremely excited about it. And I'd like to now introduce Lloyd from the Kubert School to announce the recipient of the Joe Kubert Distinguished Storyteller Award.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much for having us out here. Thank all you guys here on the panel for all your contributions. I know we've all been on a long string of emails for the last few months to get this done. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of Adam and Andy and the whole Kubert family, to include the school and the staff, I just want to say thank you first and foremost for you guys getting this whole thing over. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. There are 3 things that we talk about at this school, and it's kind of a mantra of ours. We say you got to be really good at 2 of the 3 things to make it in the industry. And those are, the first thing is you got to be good at what you do. The second thing is you got to be fast, because it's a deadline-driven business. And the third thing is you got to be easy to work with, meaning you got to have a good attitude. Now, we say you got to be really good at 2 of the 3. And if you are, what we've seen over time, the school's been around, this year will be 42 years. Over time, you'll be good. You'll make it. You can have a career in the industry. If you are good at all 3, you will be great. Good gets you in, great gets you a legacy. Joe was amazing at all 3. The very first time I met Joe, I was a first-year student at the school. Like you're always on the clock. Yeah. The very first time I met Joe, I was a first-year student, and I'd gone into the Army. And I was in the Army for 10 years, and I got out and moved to New York so I could be close to New Jersey, kind of, recalibrated in New York, and finally got the opportunity to go to the school. So I was a little older than everybody. And the coolest thing I remember, this was 2011, you would, take a break from class and go to the bathroom. You might see Joe walking in the hallway, and it'd be like, oh man, and you go to the bathroom, come back and like geek out in class, like, hey, I saw Joe, And everybody had a story like that. And so I had an idea, and my teacher said, you should run your idea by Joe. And I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. And he said, no, you should go to his office right now. I said, is that okay? He said, sure. So I go in, knock on the door. He tells me to come in. And if you've ever been to the school, Joe's office is like a museum. I mean, there's pictures with celebrities, there's original art, there's statues, there's books. It's amazing. But there's this massive art table that he's working at. And he's in this big kind of throne-like swivel chair. and he was working on 3 pages, and they were all at various stages of completion. And what I remember most is he was inking a page, and he said, "Hey, have a seat." He kind of looked at me to the side. I sat down, and he put his tools down, and he turned around, and he gave me his full attention. And I think in that moment, like, I had forgotten what I was there to say, because I was just blown away that he would stop what he was doing, which was very important work, and he would give me his full attention. And that action, which is very simple and very considerate, had a profound impact on me as a young artist. I do that now. At every convention I'm at, I'll be there drawing, and if anyone wants to talk, it's the first thing I do. I put all my tools down and give them my full attention, because that's what Joe showed me. In that conversation, I learned that he and I both lived in Brooklyn, in the same neighborhood, that we both served in the military, in Germany, in the same area. And I never would have known any of that unless he gave me the time of day. And I think that was one of the most unique things about Joe. Joe would make you feel like it was all right for you to be yourself. And you can't teach that. And that's a legacy that we would like to continue. So, on behalf of the school, the Kubert family, I would like to present the inaugural Joe Kubert Distinguished Storyteller Award to none other than Stan Sakai. This is awesome. When we got the word that Stan was going to be the first recipient, running it by Adam and Andy, I mean, it was literally a no-brainer. Stan's work and his contribution to the comic book industry is, even in this very moment, legendary. What he did with his character in Usagi Yojimbo and carving out his own niche, his own corner, it's like if the comics world was a map, there would be a Stan Sakai Island. And I encourage everyone to go visit and hang out, because it's a world unto itself. Unfortunately, Stan can't be here to receive the award, but on his behalf, we have Paul Jenkins, the wonderful Paul Jenkins. So please,
All right. Hey everyone, thank you for being here, and I have to say, on a personal level, that I cannot think of a more deserving person to be given this award than Stan Sakai. I was lucky enough to meet Stan when I first broke into this business with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He was one of the very first people I met, and he is quite possibly the kindest human being that I've ever met in my life. So a couple of things. It's a shame that unfortunately Stan couldn't be here, but Stan did prepare a statement. So if I can, I'd just like to read that first. Stan says, "I had been a fan of Joe Kubert from the time I discovered Sergeant Rock and Hawkman in the '60s. Enemy Ace is still a high watermark that very few have equaled and none have surpassed. I met Joe through a mutual friend, Sergio Aragones, and I was privileged to speak to him many times, and each time was memorable. I admired Joe's powerful art, his flawless compositions, and his brilliant storytelling, but most of all, I admired his dedication to the craft of creating comics and his desire to pass that love and knowledge to young creators with the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphic Art. It is a very great honor to receive this inaugural Joe Kubert Distinguished Storyteller Award at Comic-Con Revolution, Ontario." So that's Stan's statement. But also, a number of people from the comics community gave statements that they would like to say about Stan. Stephen Frank, the creative Silver. "Stan Sakai's world of stories is captivating, enchanting, whimsical, and completely epic. In other words, Stan has the rare ability to tell the most universal stories in the weirdest way possible. That is storytelling gold and the work of a true cartoonist." Jeff Darrow, who created Shaolin Cowboy, says, "Stan Sakai is everything any artist in any field would aspire to be. A superbly talented craftsman gifted with an endless imagination and a dedication that amazes and inspires. If there was such a thing as artistic Bushido, Stan would embody it. I love Stan Sakai." David Mack, who's the creator of Kabuki. Stan is such a great choice to receive this award. He's been a great example of a creator having a vision and seeing it through. I had the good fortune to do some signings in Paris with Stan many years ago and meeting him very early in my career. In addition to his work and commitment to his work being a guiding example of a creator manifesting his vision, as a person he has always been kind and nurturing to the new comic creators as well. But there's more. My good friend Bill Sienkiewicz. Stan Sakai is a personal hero of mine, the epitome of what one person with a unique vision can do creatively. His singular commitment to his art and story, mainly via his brilliant Usagi Yojimbo, should be inspiring to anyone with their own story to tell. This is how you do it. You commit every single day. So here we are, 34 years later, enriched by his wonderful tapestry of humor, wit, empathy, artistry, and history. And thankfully, there is so much more to come from him. And finally, Mike Richardson, who's the publisher of Dark Horse. For 20 years, it's been the immense pleasure of Dark Horse Comics to publish the great Stan Sakai. For over 150 issues and numerous graphic novels, Usagi Yojimbo has charmed countless readers and fans. Stan Sakai's storytelling is magical, and it is my privilege not only to have published him, but to have collaborated with him on 47 Ronin. Stan is a legendary cartoonist, one whose work will inspire creators and readers alike for years to come. And finally, I get to say my small piece. Stan doesn't know it, but I have a debt of gratitude to him. When I was 20 years old, I came over from Great Britain, and the first job I found in comics was with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And one of the very first people I met was Stan Sakai. It may seem unrelated, but when I was a child, I was very struck by the soccer player, the footballer, Pelé. And I was privileged to watch a recording of his last game in which they lifted him on his shoulders to celebrate his brilliant career. And as they paraded him around the stadium in New York, Pelé simply said the word love repeatedly. Love, love, that's all he said. And what that meant was that Pelé was trying to articulate, I think, that everything that he had done in soccer, all of his accomplishments, was done via love. When I met Stan, he imparted on me, a 20-year-old kid, that he loved his craft and he loved the people. And more than his craft, you know, the character Miyamoto Usagi is actually based, I believe, on Miyamoto Musashi, who is a famous Japanese warrior that won 66 battles. That's a person with a dedication to craft. Stan Sakai is a person with a dedication to his craft. But apart from his ability as a creator, he is an even better human being, and that is going to be his legacy. The love that Joe Kubert brought out of his work emanates outwards and flows into all of us. The love that Stan Sakai brought into his work emanates outwards and flows into all of us. And that's what I aspire to as a creator. So, on behalf of Stan Sakai, thank you very much for this award.
Again, everybody, just want to thank you for coming out to be part of something that's really special. It's an honor for Comic-Con Revolution to be hosting this award year in and year out. It's an honor to be working with everybody at the Kubert School, at Geek Chic Promotions, at Superfan Promotions. We look forward to hopefully, you know, inspiring an entire new generation. We saw a ton of kids walking around this convention today, and is the next Joe Kubert out there? You know, is the next Stan Sakai out there? Yeah, because that's where they're going to come from. And this team up here, people like Paul, people like Stan, you know, are going to mold them and, you know, keep the cycle of life going in this industry. So again, thanks everybody, and it is truly an honor to be part of this.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Didn't recognize you with the clothes on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That was great. Stan, one of the first people I met. Stan, super cool, kindest person. So my entire career, my company.
Stop it.